Well, welcome to Focus Today. I'm your host, Perry Atkinson, and I wanted to take a few moments at the top of the program to talk to you a little bit about some things going on here at the Dove, and in particular, in encouraging you to use the Dove to help other people. And what we're finding out is now that the Dove has expanded in so many areas, as you know, we're on 4 FM stations, we're on 6 FM translators, and all over the place with television, and especially now with Roku, literally in all 50 states. And the last time I saw a report, we were being watched in 26 countries. And of course, the amount of people that watch the various aspects of the program or take various YouTubes of the program, share it with other people. And it's just remarkable how the Lord is using the Dove. But lately, I've been very much concerned that with all the things going on, not only in our country, but around the world, that you use the Dove as a friendly way to help minister to people. In addition, you're helping the Dove to grow. And we are asking you to maybe share the Dove with your family and your friends. You can certainly send them a link to the website. You can maybe take one of the YouTube videos from one of the segments of the programs and the interviews that we do and send them a copy of that. You can invite them to go to the website. You can invite them to listen. You certainly let us know if you need an extra devotional to share with them. But there seems to be an incredible need out there. And let me just show you something for those watching on the Dove TV. Now, if you're listening on the radio, you can't see this, but I have in my hand here a folder. These are just recent letters of people who have contacted the Dove and have made comment on how the Dove has impacted them through various means. And some of these are very heart-wrenching prayer requests as well. And it happens all the time. We get emails, phone calls, and handwritten letters of people who write us and say the Dove has ministered to them, or they're asking for prayer. And now that the Dove is being seen and heard in new areas like Brookings and up and down the Southern Oregon coastline, and now through Roku all over the place, the request for prayer has even gone up more. So it dawned on me that a couple of things occur here. We're asking you to share the Dove with more people. That will help us, but more importantly, use the Dove as a tool to minister to other people. I got some statistics over the weekend that were quite stunning, and this is America. And whoever thought that America would need evangelizing? And yet with all of the conveniences that we have and the large congregations and venues of various Christian ministries and outreaches, we saw a statistic over the weekend that said 70% of the people in the U.S. will never become born again. When I read that, and this was done from a research back in '09, so it's several years old, and out of that, 40% of the people attending church members, 40% of those never are born again. So there's obviously some issues out there, and this isn't to put down churches by any means, because I believe the heart of God is for the church. And what the Dove is, we augment what the church does. Our desire is to get people to go to church. Our desire is to get people to belong to a church. And wherever God calls you and wherever you are ministered to, become a part of that family and become a part of that congregation, and let them help you and nurture you and love you, and then turn around and as you come through your issues and the Lord begins to heal you, turn around and share that with others. The other thing that was stunning to me is that 85% of the churches in America have plateaued or declining. And 95% of all Christians never win one person to Christ during their lifetime. 95% of all Christians never win one person to Christ during their lifetime. I was riveted when I began to research and see that statistic. I thought, oh my, what are we doing here? Everything about the Dove is to reach people with Christ and for Christ, and to bring His love and His encouragement into people's lives. So I want you to stop and think about something. Who in your life needs help? Who in your life needs ministering to? Who in your life do you want to see God become a part of their life and love them and help them and minister to them? I would dare to say that everyone that's watching and listening, there is somebody in your life that you want to see one to Christ, or you want to see somebody encouraged or uplifted. And you know, the variety of the programming that's on the Dove offers you an opportunity to share that content with those people. You can take a link from one of our shows. You can take a link from one of the YouTubes that we do. And the list goes on. Just go to our website and see the vast material that is there for you to share with others. Or perhaps the word for you today. Or maybe you can encourage them just to tune in and watch the morning news, and who knows what God will do. The scripture that the Lord put on my heart several years ago ends up being a reality of this stack of letters that we get. And these are just recent, okay? There's a lot more in our file. In fact, we got several bundles like this in our file. And that scripture is found in Romans 10:20. It says this, I was found by those who were not seeking me, and I manifested myself to those who didn't ask. So think about that. When people aren't even seeking the Lord, they find him. And while they're watching a program or listening to a program, they're not even asking for God to show up. He manifests his love for them through the content of the program. And media has become the mission field to reach America. When you see these statistics like this, that 95% of the Christians never win one person to Christ in their lifetime, doesn't that concern you? This isn't an exclusive club. This isn't something that we get and we hold on selfishly to ourselves. This is something that we share with others. Another statistic that I read was 50% of churches did not baptize one person last year. What are we doing? And 3,750 churches will close this year. Now, folks, those are not good numbers, and I'm not saying that to be negative. What I'm saying is that we live in this high-tech world where we have all of these conveniences through smartphones and tablets and all of these tools that we have. When we begin to look at where we are with the Dove and where we're going with the Dove, we begin to seek the Lord as to, all right, Lord, what is next? We never thought we'd be just a radio station. And then we realize the digital age is upon us, and it is now the platform to reach millions of people. And so the Lord led us into the digital age, and we went on to the website, and we went into smartphones, and we have apps now for smartphones and for tablets. And then the Lord led us into Roku, which has just exploded and opened up a whole new world and opportunity to reach people. And of course, expanding on the radio side and expanding on the television side. And I can't say that we went looking for these. These were doors that opened that we just carefully walked through. God brought them to us, and we took advantage of those and walked through that by faith. And now we're touching literally thousands of people an hour, if you can imagine that. So here's what I'm asking you to prayerfully do. Share the Dove with your family and friends. Use it as a tool of evangelism. Use it as a tool of ministry. Use it as something that you can get to them that they otherwise maybe wouldn't even consider. In the privacy of their car, or their home, or their computer, or their phone, they can tune in, they can connect with the Dove, and then we will trust God to fulfill Romans 10:20 and matching the content of that particular program at the right moment to reach people. And that's primarily what comes as a result of this stack of letters. These are people who tuned in and heard something at the exact moment that reached them. That's what it's all about. And when I heard some of these numbers over the weekend, I thought, you know, the whole world is seeking truth. The whole world is saying, who can I trust? Where can I go? What is the answer? Is there anybody really listening? Does anybody really love me? Is there really truth out there? Well, we believers know what that is. We know that the person they can trust is Christ, and that he has a plan for them, and he loves them, and his plans are to prosper them and to encourage them and to strengthen them. The scripture says that. And yet, we somehow hold on to that as somehow some private accomplishment to ourselves when we are to give it away. Freely you have received, freely give. And so I'm asking you today to do something that has dual meaning. You're helping the Dove to reach thousands of more people. And so you're helping us to grow. And that's part of it. But the main thing is for you to use the Dove to minister to your family and to your friends. And then you can do it by all means. You can go online and just start sending the website to them or portions of the website. You can go over to this particular program where we have put up all the interviews. They're not only up on our website, they're also up on Roku. And you can send your family and friends those links and they can watch those. You can invite them to tune in at a various program. Maybe you like Chuck Swindoll or Charles Stanley or Dr. David Jeremiah. You can ask them to tune in to various. There's a reason why we repeat our top programs on the radio in the evening, so that when you come home from a busy day, instead of getting cluttered with all the other things, you can just turn on some good teaching and let your mind be full of God's Word before you go to bed. All of this is strategically planned for you to not only minister to you and to help you and to strengthen you, but then share that with somebody else and see what God does with it. And let me say also, as we're going to move on here in just a second, we do need your help. None of this just happens on its own. And we are totally listener-supported and viewer-supported. And because of you, the Dove has expanded far beyond anything we ever dreamed possible. And all of this has been done by faith, and we can't do it without your help. We are still a little off in our operating budget for September, so we do need your help. But let that be something that God calls you to do. I only ask two things when you support the Dove. One, that God is calling you to do it, and two, it's a joy for you to do it. And if you feel led of the Lord to support the Dove, give us a call at 541-776-5368, or you can go online at thedove.us. It's safe and secure there. But share the Dove with somebody today. Use the Dove as a tool of evangelism to win your family and friends. And then let us know how else we can help you. Maybe you need an extra copy of the Word for You today. We'll make that available to you. Okay? All right, stick around. We got some great guests coming up here in just a moment.
Hi, I'm Paulina, and I work at theDove TV. Did you know that when you support theDove TV, you have a profound impact, not only in our community, but around the world? It's your continued support that takes the inspiration and hope in the programs we produce and makes them available to the thousands of people who are watching these videos online every week. Help bring encouragement and hope to our valley and beyond by making a secure online donation today at our website, thedove.us.
Well, being all concerned about what's going on in public schools in so many ways, earlier we had a story about Common Core and how 62% of Americans don't even know what it is, and yet 45 states have adopted Common Core as their standard of tests for public education. Well, part of some of this research shows that people want the Bible back in the schools. Well, voila! How noble is that? So I am really honored to have with us Doug Birdsall. He is with the American Bible Society, talking about the place for the Bible back into public education. So join me now as we talk to Doug. Well, today I'm really quite honored to have with us Doug Birdsall. He's the president of the American Bible Society, and I've looked forward to talking to Doug for quite some time. And Doug, welcome to the program today.
Thank you, Barry. It's nice to be with you.
The work you do is just terrific, and I want to say thank you for the long hours you and your team put in. And but today we see some interesting numbers that 2/3 of Americans want Bibles back in the public schools. How refreshing!
It is interesting, isn't it? This is actually comes to us through a study that the American Bible Society does in partnership with the Barna Research Group. And there is a growing sense of awareness that we are in moral decline. And about 2/3 of the people in our country really do sense that the best source of hope for reversing these trends is greater awareness of, respect for, engagement with the Bible.
So what do Americans see in the Bible as the role in public school?
This is interesting, Perry. This can be looked at many ways. And of course, we know that there are very intense debates about the place of religion, the place of the Bible in public schools. The findings have indicated, as you just mentioned, that about 70% of people across the country would like to see a greater emphasis, a greater awareness of, and instruction from the Bible in public schools. I think that there are probably 2 or 3 ways that I would interpret this. First of all, people see a moral decline, so they're looking for answers.
Right.
I think that there's many people in this country who realize that the foundations for the things that we value most in our society, the dignity of the individual, freedom, land rights, voting rights, these kinds of things, is the writers of our Constitution and the Declaration of Independence. There was an acknowledgement these come to us from our Creator. There's a sense of the natural created order. So I think people are looking for moral guidance. I think people also want people simply to be aware of a book that has been the most influential book in Western civilization, for people to be aware of that so that they're literate about our society. And I think people are also looking for a sense of connectedness to a community of people across the country where there might be some shared values. I think it would be up to local educators, people who make decisions about how the Bible might be taught. It's interesting that many universities offer courses that deal with the Bible in American public life, the Bible in American experience. We're simply reporting what we have seen, that a vast majority of people in the country would like to see some emphasis on the Bible in our education system. Isn't it somewhat, Doug, an admittance of a higher moral law and in recognizing the need for the Bible to be in public school, or does it open the door for other religious books to be taught on equal basis? I think probably both. And I think that in a pluralistic society, it's actually not a bad idea at all for people of Christian faith to be aware of other religions, Judaism, Hinduism, Buddhism. I think simply to understand something about them, their history. When I was a graduate student at Harvard University, I studied Buddhism. That was largely because of the fact that I was a minister working in Asia, but I needed to understand that faith system, its literature, its history, its impact. There should be no fear of people being aware of other religious systems. I think that there is obviously a delicate problem when a teacher might be trying to teach a subject as an advocate, trying to proselytize students. That does not need to be a concern of ours. In terms of, I mean, I should say that should be a concern of ours. But I think if people are teaching a religious system so that people can understand it, that probably is helpful. I think that if people are given exposure to the Bible, if they're allowed to read it, I think many people will discover, they will begin to make the connections. Now I see where this comes from, this value in our society. The idea of giving people a second chance, that is a distinctly Christian concept. Because you're basically saying the Bible can defend itself among these other literatures. Absolutely. Spurgeon, the great Baptist minister in London, said, I would rather defend lions than have to defend the Bible. It's so powerful it can speak for itself. So is there a trend now? Are certain states allowing this back into public schools, and are others to follow suit? There's no evidence to support that, Perry, that we are seeing in any trends. I think increasingly we are seeing people discuss this, and you have picked up on this story as a story for the public square. Right. I think people were astounded earlier this year when the Bible miniseries developed by Mark Burnett was viewed by over 100 million people. A phenomenal success. How do you explain that? I don't know that anybody has satisfactorily, but obviously something that Mark was advised not to do because there was seemingly no market for it. Nearly a third of the people in our country watched at least a portion of that. So I think people realize that in a society that is becoming increasingly tolerant, that's not all bad, but to the point when people cannot make a moral judgment about anything, then that means we simply have no point of reference, because the Bible does provide a moral framework for individuals, for families, for communities, for making good judgments that serve the common good. During your survey, when you discovered this 70% plus that wants Bible back in the public schools, was anything else in that survey that may have stood out to you? Well, yes, thank you for asking, Perry. What we discovered is that whereas 70% of the respondents to that survey who also indicated that there was a sense of moral decline, felt that the best response to that was the Bible. Two things that concern us. One is the number of Christians who respect the Bible, who read it rarely. And so we're really wanting to work with churches across the country to encourage them to make the Bible more central to their life. Whether it be small group Bible studies, Sunday school classes, catechism, Sunday morning worship where the Bible is read and preached, it's really imperative that if we have any desire for the Bible to be effective in our wider culture, that it has to be central to our life as those who love Jesus Christ and who love His Word. A second thing that really came out to us was, and is a matter of concern to us, is that the large number of people who are younger in our country, particularly those under the age of 30, who almost never read the Bible. I think that something like 80% of that generation under 30 rarely, if ever, read the Bible. That really is a concern to us.
That's an incredible discovery. And you're wondering, with modern technology, which we're trying to do here, we're trying to be on every digital platform with God's Word, if that is the means to get it into the younger generation.
Very good question and very good point. I'm glad that you raised that. Just 2 weeks ago, here in New York City, on the front page of the New York Times, there was a story about YouVersion, citing the fact that it has been downloaded over 100 million times. And they suggested what a huge success, what a phenomena that is. And so that's really the encouraging side of the story, because it may be that there are people who are accessing Scripture, whether it's a verse at a time, a chapter at a time, a concept at a time, a whole book at a time, who perhaps are getting access to the Bible through digital platforms. And so I commend you for what you're doing. It would encourage you to make the Bible central to your work and to your message.
It certainly is. There's no question about that. We just launched on Roku not even a week ago, and we went from channel 223 in the religious and spiritual column all the way to 21 in 6 days. So there's a hunger for God's Word, and I think the digital platform is just another tool God's dropped into our hand to win those young people. Well, Doug, you're a delight. American Bible Society, where can people communicate with you and learn more about it?
The easiest way, obviously, is on the web, to go to AmericanBible.org. Very simple, AmericanBible.org. And they can learn all about what we do, how they can be involved, learn something of our vision for the next generation, which really is the driving passion. We are committed to working together with churches, with colleges and seminaries, with publishing organizations, with youth organizations, to get the Bible into the hands and the minds and the hearts of every person in the country under the age of 28. We believe that will really have a redemptive, renewing impact upon our churches and upon our society.
Wonderful. Thank you, my friend. It's a delight, and we'll have you back soon.
I'll look forward to that. Thank you, Perry.
Well, that certainly is good news, no question about it. Well, what's going on with the feds these days and the economy? Our next guest is going to talk about the changing of the guards, at least the Fed chairmanship, and a whole bunch more coming up in just a few moments.
Hi, I'm Daniel, and I work at theDove TV. You know, compared to Portland, Seattle, and LA, Medford might be considered a small market, but at theDove, we're excited about the opportunity to make a big impact right here in our community. And you help make that happen. Did you know that more than 90% of our income comes from people like you? You can help us now by making a secure online donation at our website, thedove.us, or by phoning 541-776-5368.
Well, we're all concerned about the economy. Where is it? Where is it going? And of course, now with the budget tug-of-wars going on in Capitol Hill, well, there's much to be said about that. But I am really honored to have with us today Hunter Lewis. He is the, well, first of all, he contributes to Forbes magazine. He's co-founder of the global investment firm Cambridge Associates. And he's authored a couple of books that are fascinating. Free Prices Now, Fixing the Economy by Abolishing the Fed. Okay. And the other one is Crony Capitalism in America. And we want to talk to him about all of these issues. Hunter, nice to have you. Where are you, my friend?
Good to be with you. I'm in Charlottesville, Virginia.
All right, nice to have you. Well, we've been speculating that there's going to be a change at the Guard coming up in January, and but let's talk about the current Fed chair, Bernanke. What's your thoughts on him?
Well, he's been an unmitigated disaster. He's been even worse than Alan Greenspan. The prior Fed chairman, Paul Volcker, was really quite a success. He got the economy in pretty good shape, and the last two have made a complete mess.
Now these are Bush appointees, and so how do you justify? What would you say about them being somewhat appointed by Bush?
Well, Ronald Reagan appointed Alan Greenspan. That was the biggest mistake he made. And George Bush, of course, appointed Bernanke, and then Obama reappointed him. And that really illustrates that the economic problem we're having is not just from one party. It's a bipartisan problem. Both parties are involved in it, both the bad economic policies and the crony capitalism.
All right. So Bernanke, was he touted as a conservative?
Well, that's an interesting point. I wrote an article for Forbes when he was first appointed, asking the question, is Ben Bernanke a conservative? And then answering no. But you see, it wasn't so clear at that moment because you had to read between the lines to figure out what his beliefs were.
Well, it's been so interesting as we watch these folks perform in that. You're not the only one that has come out with some sharp criticism on. I know I've had a lot of money manager people on said that this guy single-handedly has ruined the economy.
Well, that's right. I mean, we've had a recovery for some rich people, but we haven't had a recovery for the average person or the middle class or especially poor people. And that's not the way it's supposed to be working.
So how do we as citizens put a check on these people? They seem to be so powerful and unchecked.
Well, first of all, people have to understand that the chairman of the Federal Reserve Board, in many respects, has more control over the economy than the president does. The general level of awareness is very poor here. The people don't know much about the Fed. They don't know what's going on. There were other periods in American history when the voters were very focused on monetary policy. We had a cross of gold speech, in the 19th century and so on. That was just part of politics. But today, people are kind of asleep, and they need to wake up.
All right, so back to Greenspan and Bernanke. It would seem to me that why wouldn't the president or their administration vet these guys a little bit more? Because they seem to be the dream chairmen for the left.
Right, and George Bush, I know that there was at least one voice in the White House that was raising questions about Bernanke. But I think George Bush felt that he knew Bernanke and that he was kind of his guy, that he could trust him. And he didn't, he should have paid more attention because he could have gotten out of office without that crash if he had appointed a different Fed chair.
Well, the first heads up I felt on this, Hunter, was when Obama reappointed him. I thought, uh-oh, there's something about this guy I didn't get either.
Well, when Bernanke was first named, by Bush, Senator Schumer and Kerry and the most liberal Democrats immediately applauded it and said it was a great appointment.
All right, so can you point to any single thing that you felt was a disaster in some of his decisions?
In general, the Federal Reserve has just been printing way too much money. They've been operating on the theory that if you have a problem caused by too much debt, you can solve it by adding more debt, which of course defies common sense. And actually by adding debt, you can reduce the debt. It all totally defies common sense and has led them to print way too much money, over the last 20 years. And all of that money just leads to bubbles, and then it leads to bust. And it also leads to crony capitalism, the corruption of our economy.
All right, I want to kind of get into that because I never could figure out why Bernanke or even Greenspan would make certain moves and it would reflect positively on Wall Street when in fact we're piling up debt. So that only has to lead towards your latest book, or the book earlier, I should say, Crony Capitalism. What's the connection?
Well, you have to understand how it works. When the Washington, bails out Wall Street, of course, there's a conveyor belt of money going to Wall Street. And Wall Street is in a position to either make money from that money, they take a cut on it, or they speculate with it. So they do very well. And at the same time, it's not just a bailout of Washington. It's also, at the same moment, a bailout of Washington. Because Wall Street then turns around and buys government bonds, and then the Federal Reserve buys those bonds back with its newly printed money. So in effect, Washington is able to sell bonds to itself by sending it via Wall Street. This is all, you know, bad stuff, and people just don't understand what's happening.
No, I don't think the average person does. And so how critical are we to some kind of a breakdown?
It's always hard to know when the breakdown will occur, but when you're blowing up these bubbles, it's just a matter of time before the bubble will burst. The Fed.
Okay, sorry about that. We'll get reconnected. We're talking to Hunter Lewis. He is a contributor to Forbes magazine. He's also the co-founder of global investment firm Cambridge Associates. And 2 books. You may want to check them out at Barnes & Noble or online at Amazon. Free Prices Now, which is the Fixing the Economy by Abolishing the Fed. And when we get him reconnected, we'll talk to him about that. And the book that kind of put him on the map was Crony Capitalism. And as you know, the current Fed chair, Ben Bernanke, will be retiring at the end of this year. And there's great speculation now as to who's going to replace him as the Fed chair, which in itself is a big issue because the person's name that keeps popping up is Yemen. And we don't know a whole lot about her, other than she is an economic professor, former economic professor, I should say, from the University of California at Berkeley, and currently works with a fairly large bank, and I'm sorry I don't have the name of that right here, but another potential liberal going into that seat, which could really make things very, very interesting. And all of that now is starting to pop up as the president pretty much has said she's going to be the appointee. So let me take a break. We'll try to get reconnected with Hunter as soon as we can to finish our conversation. Again, his books, there's 2 of them, and the one that we want to get into when we get it back is Free Prices Now, the Fixing the Economy by Abolishing the Fed. I wonder if that can be done. I know a lot of you economic advisors and financial advisors like to see that happen. And the other book that received great criticism, but yet turned a lot of heads, Crony Capitalism in America, 2008 to 2012. All right, we'll take a quick break. We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Paula, and I work at theDove TV. Every day we get letters and emails from people who've been encouraged, blessed, and challenged by the programs on theDove TV. But we couldn't do it without you. Did you know that more than 90% of our income comes from people like you? You can help us continue to bring inspiration and hope to our community by making a secure online donation at our website, thedove.us, or call us at 541-776-5368.
Okay, we're back, and we got reconnected. Sorry about that. Hunter Lewis is with us today, and he's authored a couple of books. Free Prices Now, Fixing the Economy by Abolishing the Fed. I want to ask him if that can be done. And his first book, Crony Capitalism. Sorry about that, Hunter, but I want to come back to Bernanke just for a moment. Do you think his policies will survive his departure?
I wish they wouldn't, but at the moment the signs are pretty clear that they will.
Is this
the leading candidate to succeed him, Janet Yellen, is even more likely to print money than he has been.
Give us a little background of her. I mean, I do know that she was a professor at Berkeley, and then she went on to be into the banking world. Give us a little background on her.
Well, she hasn't really had banking experience. She's an academic, and you know, some people jokingly say that today our monetary system is the PhD standard, you know, instead of the gold standard or something else. And that's about right. I mean, we have these academics who are running things, and they're running them based on theories. And the theory they're using at the moment has very little factual support or logic behind it.
Wow. All right, back to Bernanke just for a moment. Now, is the Fed held to laws or statutes? Maybe you can explain that. I mean, what does that chairman abide by? And has Bernanke violated any of that?
I mean, this is another really worrying situation because, of course, the Fed was set up 100 years ago. It's the 100th anniversary. There was a law establishing it, and the law has changed over the years. And certainly, much of what they did in 2008 and 2009 was legal, but some of what they did was illegal. And then the question is, how can you challenge when they're engaging in illegal behavior? It's very difficult. The Supreme Court recently ruled that even a bank, which is regulated by the Fed, cannot sue the Fed over this kind of activity unless the bank can show that it's been harmed financially. So nobody has standing to sue the Fed.
All right. Now, you have suggested, and so have a lot of other people, abolishing the Fed. Could that actually happen?
Well, certainly isn't likely right now, but we have to remember that for most of American history, we didn't have a Fed. So there's no question that the system does not need a Fed. And in terms of the possibilities for the future, you know, change can come very unexpectedly and dramatically. If the system breaks down, there will be change, and there can be dramatic change. I mean, nobody ever imagined that currencies around the world would float, as they say, would be just traded in the markets from day to day. That was unimaginable, and yet suddenly in the 1970s it happened.
All right, so Yellen comes in. I mean, apparently now she is the heir apparent as other people pull themselves out of nomination consideration. And I think the president's all but named her at the moment. And if she comes in, she starts printing money. In your opinion, Hunter, what will that do to us?
Well, what I'm afraid of is that she'll print even more money than Ben Bernanke has. That will blow up bubbles even bigger. And the bigger the bubble, the bigger the crash that follows. So, you know, it'll just be more damage, especially to the middle class and the poor. And they can't afford that. I mean, the middle class has real income has declined more since the end of the recession than during the recession. The average real income of Americans is no more than it was 23 years ago.
Well, as you know, we got the big battle going on the Hill as we speak, and the House now has passed the budget that does not including Obamacare, and that's going to be the political hot potato of the week as we head towards October 1st. And there's always this threat of a shutdown. Isn't a shutdown better than a breakdown?
Well, because I'm not opposed to a shutdown, but the problem with a shutdown is that the president will then decide, you know, what is funded and what is not funded. And of course, we went through this with Clinton, and he just deliberately chose all the areas that would annoy people the most. So he closed the passport office, and he shut down the people that work when you come in and out of the country, all these kinds of things, just to make the pain as intense as possible. So a government shutdown could be done, but it would have to be done with a different president.
All right, but what if now, I mean, the pressure for the Republicans to give in on funding Obamacare is pretty intense because they're obviously going to get tagged with shutting the government down. All numbers point towards Obamacare really being the breaking point. Would you agree with that?
Well, Obamacare has damaged the economy a great deal. And of course, as you read, you know, it's leading to people getting part-time jobs instead of full-time jobs. Right. I mean, Obamacare added $2 to $5 in effect to the minimum wage, so that it really has hit hardest the people at the bottom of the ladder. I mean, the people with the lowest wages, now the cost to a business to hire them has gone up so much that many of them, of course, are being laid off. It just follows that and also many young people are not being hired. And I especially worry about young people because they come out of school, you know, with this tremendous burden of debt. That burden of debt, which has been created by the government, because the government has subsidized the student loans, and that money has gone to the colleges and just resulted in higher tuition and fees. So the kids have all of that, then they get unemployment. Then there are new overtime rules that make it even harder to hire them. I mean, everything that's being done is really working against them.
All right. I think the average American understands we're spending more than we're taking in. They want to raise the debt ceiling. We can't afford Obamacare. It's been given a bunch of opt-outs for various groups and companies and even Congress itself. And we got this incredible debt hanging over the top of us. Is there any way out of this mess, Hunter, in your opinion?
Well, absolutely. I mean, we have to change the economic policies. And we have to stop this growing corruption of crony capitalism, which is just the other side of the coin of the bad economic policies, because the bad economic policies are helping people who have connections to the government, who can have first use of all this money that's being printed. I mean, people are getting very, very rich at the same time the country's doing so badly. All you have to do is reverse those policies. That will reverse the drift toward more and more cronyism, and that will put the economy right again. Of course, it won't be painless, but the way we're going to end up with the most pain of all.
All right, so explain crony capitalism from your perspective. We hear this a lot. I think I understand it to a certain degree, but some people would write you off as a conspiracy wacko. So explain it from your perspective.
You know, I don't think that most people would say that crony capitalism is a conspiracy theory. I mean, I think they see it themselves. Right. But what is it? I mean, it's the alliance of big government with big business, big finance, big labor, big law. I mean, all of these bigs get together and they make deals that work well for themselves, but not for the public and not for the middle class and not for the poor. Just to give you one example, at the beginning of this year, we had the fiscal cliff bill, and President Obama succeeded in raising taxes on some of the rich through that bill, but he stuck in a provision in that bill lowering taxes on his favored corporations. And the tax reductions on those favored corporations completely offset any additional tax revenue from the rich. And of course, that was done with sleight of hand, behind the scenes, and the media didn't even report on it.
All right, now we're starting to see a little bit of pushback, even with PERS and unions. We've seen some state battles. Do you think that pushback will continue? Yes, because the system doesn't work. And in the long run, it doesn't even work for labor unions. So even though they've been such big supporters of the present system, I mean, even they in the long run are going to realize, hey, you know, these policies are just creating unemployment. You know, our own labor union members are being laid off. This will not work, or they don't have proper health care. The cost of health care is going up so much. Yeah, and as I mentioned, you know, I mean, I was talking about young people and what's happening to them. Another element of Obamacare is that the cost of their health care, of course, is going way up. Mm-hmm. You know, even in the state of Oregon, as we speak, we're going into special session next week. The governor's calling one day a special session, and basically to raise taxes, but on the other hand, supposedly to cut PERS for some public employees. But the last report we had in the state of Oregon, there's a 50-50 chance that our PERS system is going to hit the wall. This is Oregon, so we can't even afford what we're raising taxes on. It just seems to be crazy economics out there. Well, you know, Franklin Roosevelt would not allow labor unions for public employees, and all Democrats, Republicans, they were all opposed to that. It came in under President Kennedy, and then of course what eventually happened is that you give more and more money to the public employee unions, and then they slice off some dues which are used to support the politicians who are giving the money to the union. So we have this increasingly corrupt system of, in effect, our tax money going to the public employee in theory, but really going to the public union, which then goes to the politicians. So the tax money is fueling, you know, this corrupt system. Wow. And it can't go on. Hunter, you seem to be the lonely watchman on the wall yelling out. Do you have anybody behind you helping with this? I mean, is there anybody that's waking up and say, hey, this has got to stop? Oh, yes. I mean, I think there are other people who are very aware of this. And there are people on Wall Street who are very aware of it and very opposed to it. I don't feel alone at all. I'm certainly not a majority yet. Yeah. But, you know, given time, people will understand this. And people have a lot of power. I mean, the average person, if they let their views known to Washington, they will be heard. The politicians are very sensitive to the calls they get and the mail they get and the emails they get. It only takes enough voters to get going, and things will change. Well, we saw that with Syria and the policy that the president was trying to impose on Syria. And we saw that thing just totally unwind and become a bigger mess. But we didn't go in. We didn't do any military force. Now comes Obamacare, and I understand it's still huge numbers of defunding Obamacare, even if it means shutting down the government. Could that trigger some kind of a domino breakdown effect?
Well, I don't think that will happen. I mean, it's very unlikely. And most likely, all of this will pass without defunding Obamacare. Senator Rand Paul, for example, just said the other day, we're not going to be able to defund Obamacare. We just don't have the power. That is, the Republicans in one house of Congress don't have the power to do it. So to some degree, this is theater, and it's not going to make that much difference. Meanwhile, the appointment of the new chairman of the Federal Reserve is going to make an enormous difference. And yet the average person isn't even aware of that.
All right. So you think Yellen's going to be the person?
It looks very likely.
And again, just repeating, where do you think that's going to go? What do you think she brings to this position on the shirt tail of Bernanke?
Well, I mean, she guarantees that we will have a continuation of the present policies, and if anything, more of them. So, we had a situation where Ben Bernanke said he might just taper, he might just slightly reduce the level of printing money and just buying the government selling debt to itself. And that shook the markets. That was in June. And it shook world markets. And then they completely backed off and didn't even do that.
All right. So what will this do to the value of the dollar if we continue to print more money?
The dollar is likely, the reason the dollar goes up, even though we do all these irresponsible things, is that other governments are often doing even more irresponsible things. There's a race to the bottom among world governments. Just as you have crony capitalism all around the world, you also have a competition in who can depreciate their currency faster so that they can sell more goods. And this is not a good thing. This is like the 1930s. You had a race to protectionism. Everybody was trying to put up tariff barriers all around the world, and it contributed to the Great Depression. So we have something analogous going on right now. Everybody's trying to get their currency value down. And so even as bad as what we're doing, our dollar tends to go up.
Well, it's interesting you say that, and that was where I wanted to go next, that the whole world seems to be playing this incredible game. And because someone would say, well, China, all China has to do is call for the note and we're in trouble. Well, we could give them California. Oh, we can't pay the debt, but here you can have California. I mean, we can never repay that debt.
Well, but one thing to keep in mind, which the average person does not understand, is that the Federal Reserve owns more of the government's debt than China or Japan do. So in other words, we think of, China's our biggest creditor. Well, no, the government's the biggest creditor of itself through the sleight of hand. Wow.
Well, Hunter, you're quite the resource. Where can people get copies of your books?
Againstcronycapitalism.org is the website.
Okay.
And of course at Amazon or Barnes & Noble or other bookstores.
All right. So what's your next article coming out? What are you writing on?
I haven't really decided yet, but I just made a couple posts to that againstcronycapitalism.org about the Federal Reserve. Warren Buffett just made some admiring comments about the Federal Reserve, so I tried to explain what it all really meant.
By the way, he did a reversal on Obamacare. He backed away from it.
I hadn't seen that.
Yeah, apparently last week he said it's not good now. And here he is. He voted for the president, supported Obamacare. Now he says, no, it's a disaster. We need to get rid of it.
Well, he said how nice it is that the Federal Reserve is contributing some money to the federal budget, but I showed how that's all baloney.
All right. Thank you, my friend. Again, cronycapitalism.com. Is that right?
Againstcronycapitalism.org.
Oh, againstcronycapitalism.org. All right. Thanks, Hunter. And keep up the good work. We'll have you back someday.
Thank you.
Okay. And again, you want to check out his books. And his first one is, well, the one that's recent. Free Prices Now, Fixing the Economy by Abolishing the Fed. And there is a picture there on the screen for those watching on the TV. And Crony Capitalism in America, you may want to check that one out as well. Check it out at Barnes & Noble. And or online at Amazon, or you can go to againstcronycapitalism.org and order it through there. All right, we'll see you next time on Focus Today.
Hi, I'm Jim, and I work at theDove TV. Every weekday between 6 and 8 a.m., our award-winning news and sports team bring you the best morning show around. It's live, it's honest, and it's a whole lot of fun. and you help make it happen. Did you know that more than 90% of our income comes from people like you? You can help us continue to air local programs that share your voice by making a secure online donation at our website, theDove.us.